The fate of Aerith is one of the most heavily debated moments to come in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Whether she escapes death or not is still up in the air, leaving fans to speculate all possible scenarios, no matter how ridiculous they might be. Her fate might not be the only controversial element in Rebirth either, because some new information regarding the Whispers has come to light. And it's looking like we'll be seeing more of the Whispers. With several new interviews, we have a lot to cover in this video, such as narrative changes, gameplay challenges, and more. So let's dive right in and discuss different scenarios we could see in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And guys, for all future Final Fantasy updates, theories, and other content, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out. In a recent interview with Indonesian gaming site Gamebrott, Hamaguchi briefly spoke about the events at the Forgotten Capital. When asked about the Forgotten Capital and if that moment has changed, Hamaguchi simply said, "We can confirm that we will give you a big surprise, so you can look forward to that later in the game." Well, what the hell? What could the surprise possibly be? Will Cloud be the one to take her life this time, just as he almost did in the original? On one hand, I feel like he's being genuine and there really will be something no one is expecting. But on the other hand, I want to say this is a red herring. When Aerith died in the original, it certainly was a big surprise, and this statement might be directed to those who are unfamiliar with the events of the original game as well. And it's entirely possible that because so many people are convinced Aerith will live this time around, killing her off in the exact same way will be just as big of a surprise as letting her live. I don't consider myself a purist. In fact, I welcome the changes because it gives me something to discuss and analyze. It's nice not having all the answers and looking forward to a fresh experience. But I have to say, Aerith's death is probably the one thing I'd like to remain exactly the same. It's going to be hard to top that gut-wrenching scene, and how do you even top something so iconic? This is the one scene I've been looking forward to because once you hear the pain in the characters' voices mixed with modern graphics, it becomes a very emotional scene, more so than the original. Should Aerith live this time around, how will they pull it off? I've seen people mention Zack will come in at the last second to save her, which could cause Cloud to have a mental breakdown earlier than the original. Or even Sephiroth might decide to kill someone else off like Tifa. And if I'm being completely honest, these scenarios both just sound terrible to me. Sephiroth killing off someone else adds nothing narratively speaking and only adds shock value. This would be a terrible direction to take the story. Even if Tifa dies, but it's all undone by the end of the trilogy and Aerith takes her place, it's just, what's the point? I guess it'll all depend on how they execute it, but her living is too big of a narrative change for me to get behind. Although this slightly goes against my theory in another video, if I had to guess how they'll handle her fate, I think Aerith will still be killed, albeit slightly differently. But we won't see the end of her. I think she will reunite with Zack and their story will continue, all taking place in the livestream. We'll see how Aerith managed to stop Meteor from within the livestream, which is something we've never seen before. This is middle ground. The purists get to see her death, and the hopeful still get more time with her. And keep in mind, it's been confirmed the remake project will link up with Advent Children, so Aerith and Zack should be dead by the end of this trilogy. As I said in the beginning, Aerith's fate isn't the only controversial topic in Rebirth. In another interview conducted by Geek Culture, Hamaguchi said, "In the previous game, we brought in the Whispers, so for the player, they can expect to see if there are any further developments for the Whispers. Not only will they appear, Zack is showing up as well." So it's like, what will happen to Zack? This is the exciting point. I should point out, Geek Culture notes that Hamaguchi did not explicitly say the Whispers are going to be returning in Rebirth. However, the statement, "not only will they appear," makes me believe they will appear in some sort of fashion, whether it's a flashback or something else entirely. Based on how Remake ended, I wonder how the Whispers will return in Rebirth. You can plainly see Sephiroth absorb all the remaining Whispers at the end of Remake right before you fight him. So the time we spent fighting the Whisper Harbinger was to weaken the Whispers enough for Sephiroth to absorb. Upon clashing with him, Sephiroth releases a ton of Whispers and energy, which begs the question what exactly the Whispers are, and where do they go once Sephiroth absorbed them. I touch on this in part 2 of my theory, so I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. If the Whispers do appear in Rebirth, I think it's possible we see them in Zack's world. But because Sephiroth absorbed most of the Whispers and is leading the party astray, it's also likely there might be one lone Whisper that avoided Sephiroth. A Whisper that still holds the memories of the original events and may end up being crucial to ensure the events play out the way they should. I'm kind of just talking out loud at this point, and some of what I'm saying is related to part 2 of my theory. I'm honestly not sure what to expect of the Whispers in Rebirth, but I'm still looking forward to what Square Enix is cooking up for us. As for Aerith, I really need her to die. As much as I love her, it just needs to happen, man. I want to briefly go over yet another interview with Hamaguchi. This interview comes from Kaukuchopurei, and there are some notable things said during the interview, so let's take a look. When asked about the character interactions, Hamaguchi briefly spoke about the Gold Saucer and specifically the date. We can look forward to a plethora of new content beyond the main storyline, and we can engage with both the essential elements and the extras, providing a diverse and enjoyable journey. This sounds like there is not only replay value, but a lot of thought went into who ends up being your date. In the original game, almost all your choices leading up to the date affected an invisible point system that determined who your date was with. This, however, sounds like what content you choose to participate in at the Gold Saucer will directly determine who your date is with. The next response has a lot of people up in arms, and I genuinely don't understand why. Hamaguchi said the primary source of inspiration when revisiting Final Fantasy VII for the remake project was actually during a visit to the movies. And surprisingly, that movie was the live-action Beauty and the Beast. Now let me go ahead and say I haven't seen it, but from what I've read, it seems to be better than the other live-action movies. But people need to understand, just because inspiration struck during this moment doesn't mean the story will now be terrible. You can be inspired by something awful because it encourages you to do it better. People are reading way too deep into this. Further down, he says, while the narrative of the movie hadn't drastically changed, what intrigued me was the transition from animation to live action. This experience illustrated the importance of preserving the core while exploring new possibilities, a concept that resonated deeply with our approach to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Sounds to me this is exactly the inspiration he needed to deliver a game we'd all enjoy. As the interview continues, Hamaguchi says, when we decided to create Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, we had two reasons. First, we didn't intend to change the story, but rather utilize modern techniques to bring out elements the players might not have noticed in the original. Things such as Cloud having his flashes, and both Sephiroth and Cloud's personality during the flashback sequence in Rebirth. Just like Beauty and the Beast coming from animation to live action, the developers now have modern tools to explore new possibilities coming from 1997 storytelling to modern day. Continuing on, he says, the other reason was our awareness of the original story and the subtle differences that existed. We engaged with the fanbase to explore their expectations for the future, and their enthusiasm was palpable. This idea of change and anticipation is a central theme in this remake, encompassing both the remake itself and the intermission content. During the remake development, we introduced the Whisper characters to make users contemplate the possibilities of future changes. This is the essence of the game's charm. The second reason for this approach is to introduce new elements and encourage users to consider how these elements might impact their experience. Basically, it sounds like what they've been saying this whole time. It's a new take on the same story. They even told us at one point we're all overthinking it. But we all know something will be different. We'll just have to wait and see what that something is. Hamaguchi also briefly touched on what it takes to obtain the Platinum Trophy, and according to him, it will be quite challenging, and it's by design. To achieve the Platinum Trophy, thorough and comprehensive gameplay is necessary. This is great news for those that like a challenge. Further down, he says, players must collect materials and items which can be quite demanding. Even after completing the game, we've incorporated features that allow you to replay specific chapters. You can select the state of your quests by resetting cleared quests or making past quests available again. This all sounds great. My hope is the materials and items he refers to that are apparently quite demanding aren't just a bunch of fetch quests, but by the way they've implemented replayable quests within replayable chapters is great news. I'm wondering if in addition to the main story, even side quests will have several decisions to make or different paths to take that can affect your overall quest reward. This game screams high replayability, and I'm loving every second of it. It's insane how close we are to Rebirth releasing. It seems like every day now new information comes out to the point where it's hard to keep up. While you're digesting all this new info, let me know what you guys think about Aerith's fate and the Whispers returning in Rebirth. And tell me what you're looking forward to most in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.